Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent. A few years out of the pandemic, overdose deaths continue to drop. A new report found that overdose deaths declined by 37% from 2023 to 2024. What are Southeast Michigan government officials doing to try to continue lowering addiction and overdose rates since the numbers hit these all-time highs? Narcan availability is a big reason for the drop, but local governments are making more investments in physical and mental health care too. Oakland County just opened its 360 Care Center, which offers same-day services for non-emergency medical needs. Why is addiction a big problem for so many people in the first place? And what can health professionals and everyday folks do to try to stop it from ruining people's lives? Producer Sam Corey spoke with Deputy County Executive for Oakland County, Madiha Tariq, to find out.
Okay, so there was a really significant drop in the number of overdose deaths in Oakland County in 2024. What accounts for this drop?
You know, it's not just one thing. I mean, this drop didn't happen in a vacuum. There are so many different things that us as a county and just the region have done. We've been very all hands on deck when it comes to addressing the issue of opiate overdose. For example, we obviously expanded places where people can get Narcan, but we also have been looking at all these upstream issues that actually lead to people going into addiction. And all of that started because we saw this insane growth in mental health outcomes during the pandemic. Even in 2023, we did a community needs survey, and 50% of the respondents for this survey said that mental health was a key issue in their lives. When asked, 1 in 3 of them said that seeking care was too challenging for them. So we knew that we had to do something that addressed those upstream factors. So we started...
Before we get into that, Madiha, 'cause I appreciate that, but we're going to get into all the things that y'all are working on, because I know Oakland County and certainly other counties as well around Southeast Michigan, but people are paying a lot more attention to mental health issues, drug overdoses, what have you. And we are seeing them come down. Now, they've been at historic highs, but these are lowering, which is really good news. Yeah, I guess I'm wondering the roots of this. You talked about the pandemic. The pandemic does definitely seem like a really big issue. People are isolated. They're away from their normal routine. They're behind screens more often. How much of this issue, though, was brewing, I guess, before the pandemic, in your understanding?
I think it was 100% brewing before the pandemic. The pandemic just brought it to light. We've ignored this issue for a very long time as a society. So, in fact, if I can say something positive that came out of the pandemic was we actually finally started to see it as an issue and started to see that substance use is a parallel issue that's happening with COVID. And I think that the increase in the opiate overdoses and then the decrease that followed happened because there were folks that were interested and invested in doing something about it. I mean, if I talked about what we did at the county since we've started our initiative, we started this thing called the Opiate Fatality Review. Okay, this is something that governmental bodies have never done before. And basically what we've done is over the course of the last year, a little over a year or so, we've looked at 21 different cases of folks that died by overdose, and we've tracked it back in time. We've looked at it retroactively to see what went wrong. Where did the cracks in the system cause their issue to become worse? And the group that is in this opiate fatality review is all kinds of folks. I mean, you're talking about mental health providers, hospital providers, our law enforcement, medical examiners from the schools. Like, people are all coming together to create a space where we can take collective responsibility and make informed decisions and not just assumptions of how we address this issue.
Were you saying this was a review of 21 people who had died of overdose?
Yes, that's correct.
What was the common theme there? Like, what was the thing, if there was one, that was linking them together of, oh, this went too far, or this went wrong for too long in their lives? Was there any kind of trend?
You know, one of the most interesting things was that almost every single case we saw, had had some interaction with the system within the last 3 to 4 months. So they'd had a touch point with the system, but because there isn't this like universal approach towards addressing people who show up at places with addiction, it becomes really hard, or like an upstream approach even, right? Like it becomes really hard to recognize that they're coming into a homeless shelter or a hospital or wherever, but they have this compounding issues that have been happening. So it's really taught us is that us as a system have to create one door and one window for people to be able to access. And we need to work on collectively demystifying the system. So no matter where you walk in, whether it's at the hospital or at the police station or at a homeless shelter or at a food pantry, that you are opening the doors to the full system of support that has been built and paid for by our taxpayers, right? Like that's the product that us as taxpayers pay for, is that system. So we should be able to utilize it. And in order to be able to utilize it, we have to demystify it. We have to improve the user experience of the system so everyone can use it.
Were folks having mental health episodes? I'm wondering how much like loneliness and depression is playing out. One of the things I want to get to is the root causes of addiction. What are some of those things that you're seeing?
I think you probably have had this conversation with so many others when you talk about addiction. Addiction can have so many doors to enter a person's life. I mean, some folks get addicted because they had a sports-related injury, and then they got surgery, and then they were taking medication, and then they got hooked, right? Some people get addicted because they're living a harsh life, and the only way to survive the physical and emotional pain of that life is using these drugs, because literally there's nothing else supporting them.
The pain is too high.
The pain is too high. And I think our goal as a society, as a governmental body, as stakeholders, is that we don't let anyone get to that point where the pain is too high. And then we can't also forget the breaks in the system of care. One of the things that's really keeping me up at night right now is what would cut in Medicaid mean for people. Because one of the reasons why we've seen a decline in care is because people can seek care because they have health coverage. Narcan is covered by Medicaid. So when all those things go away, what does that look like? Are we going back into crisis mode?
Are you expecting the numbers of overdose deaths to go up and the numbers of people coming to seek help go down in Oakland County because of essentially the Big Beautiful Bill and Medicaid cuts?
Absolutely. I mean, this is supported by national data that Medicaid has had a positive impact on people seeking care when it comes to addiction. And obviously, not just in Michigan, but across the country, Medicaid supports the distribution and usage of Narcan, which is a life-saving device for somebody who is experiencing an overdose.
Before getting to all the things that Oakland County is doing that contributes to this drop in overdose deaths, I do want to ask about one more aspect of addiction, and that is the supply side. That is the drugs themselves. Drugs have become much stronger. The technology of drugs are becoming much stronger. The alcohol percentage is higher in so many beers. Marijuana is stronger. Fentanyl, of course, is a really big player here. It's very strong. I'm wondering what you think about the technology of drugs getting stronger and how that relates to addiction, and honestly, what governments can do about it, because this seems like a somewhat new phenomenon that is really hard to tackle.
I mean, you are right. If you look at some of the most recent data that's coming out of opiate overdose deaths in Oakland County and across the country, a lot of those deaths, the toxicology reports are showing not just fentanyl, but a combination of different, cocaine and different chemicals that have contributed to it. I think our goal is, again, I'm going to put a finer point on this, is that are causing that. I think the downstream issues are going to be addressed by these settlements and the legal system. But I think
opioid settlements, like money going to families who've been overprescribed or.
Exactly. Our job is to educate the community. Our job is to address the social determinants of health that bring a person to a point where they are using it. Because guess what? If the demand is not there, the supply is going to also be impacted. I really think that as a governmental body, as a system, we have a responsibility to create environments where demand is impacted and the market takes care of the rest of it.
You're listening to the Metro on WDET, Detroit Public Radio. I'm producer Sam Corey speaking with Madiha Tariq, Deputy County Executive for Oakland County. We're discussing the drop in overdose deaths that the county saw from 2023 to 2024. Okay, Madiha, now I want to talk about a number of things that Oakland County is doing. Of course, there's Narcan distribution, which stops essentially overdose deaths. It cuts it off from happening, which is really powerful. What are some of the things that Oakland County is doing in order to prevent overdose deaths and maybe even prevent addiction before it really takes hold?
I think one of the things that we are really excited about is how we've responded to the opiate settlement funds, right? So the county, just like other places, gets about $38 million over the course of 18 years. And $38 million sounds like a big amount, but over a course of 18 years, it's not, it's not. So we needed to make sure that whatever we do with these funds are actually a good use of funds, as in they're data informed, and that we're not speaking for the people we don't speak to, and that we're also bringing the right stakeholders to the table. So we started by setting up 9 different listening sessions in communities that had been most impacted by overdose deaths. And we used that data to kind of begin building the strategies that we were going to focus on. Then we created a steering committee that includes stakeholders from all of the different kinds of communities that are impacted by overdose. I mean, this includes, our unions, our schools, hospitals, law enforcement. And then we came together to talk about what the key strategies are. And the key strategies that we are focusing on is increasing staffing and infrastructure in the system, expansion of warm handoff services on the ground so that there's less break in the system, expansion of harm reduction. And I have to put a finer point on this.
Yeah, hold on. So what you've said thus far is increase of mental health providers. I don't know if that's maybe social workers, maybe it's nurses, maybe it's people who work with folks who have addiction problems or maybe in the mental health space as well, mental health issues. But yeah, harm reduction, what does that look like? What does that mean?
Harm reduction has nationally shown to have such a positive impact in helping people get on the road to recovery. You start with a harm reduction program where you are providing a place or an access point to folks that are currently in the midst of their addiction. And they come in on a regular basis, but when they come in, they can get access to all these other things. Some of the people that come into our clinics, for example, it's their first time that they've been within 4 walls.
So it's a particular approach to addressing addiction, harm reduction.
Exactly. Harm reduction would mean providing people paraphernalia to safely use the drug they're using, but then at the same time providing them resources, recovery, therapy, all of those things. Because I think that those kind of things help people actually seek care. And you'd be surprised. I mean, the people who walk into harm reduction places around the country, I mean, some of these folks are coming in suits and ties. Okay, I think this whole notion of thinking about whatever, that offensive word is, like junkie, the face of addiction is very different. And we're not tapping and seeing all the people that are impacted by it because we don't have programs where stigma-free care can be provided.
I think you touched on something important, certainly the stigma aspect, but there's also giving people clean needles and those kinds of things. There's definitely criticisms of that saying, well, you're just encouraging people to continue to do drugs. You're facilitating this habit that people have. What do you say to people who believe that?
If you look at national data on harm reduction, a person is 3 to 5 times more likely to enter the road to recovery and much faster if they engage in those services. We've always been in this space where we tell people, oh, don't do something, right? Has that worked? I don't think it's worked. By the way, I'll tell you what's really unique about these kind of programs. Harm reduction is not just about clean needles. I think actually we need to change that notion because people think about that and they're like, oh, you guys are giving out paraphernalia. That's not what it is. Harm reduction is about bringing people that have lived experience on the ground who can talk to somebody and say, hey, I've been in your place and I'm telling you, you can get better. Our harm reduction program actually provides Narcan in a van to people who are living under bridges, right? They provide sleeping bags and jackets to people who are currently unhoused. We have nurses that go out there that have done a huge service to people who have necrosis, like they're about to lose limbs because of wounds. So our harm reduction program is primarily wound care. And when people's wounds are healed, that they were literally at rock bottom, that's when they'll come back and they'll say, I'm ready to seek care. We've had people who literally were maybe a couple of weeks away from losing a limb that saw our nurses on the ground and were able to get the care that they needed. And then they ended up seeking recovery services, ended up finding homes.
We're circling, I think, an important question, which is stigma, which I want to come back to. Because I think a lot of people, particularly people who have folks in their lives who are addicted to drugs, they want to help in some way. People who have some kind of potentially very dangerous habit, and of course, people care about them. They, on the one hand, maybe don't want to stigmatize the person because that just might make them feel bad, that person feel bad, and then push them deeper into their addiction. But they also don't want them doing harmful drugs or drugs that can be harmful to them. What do you think we should be doing to sort of thread the needle of encouraging behavior that doesn't lead to addiction? How do we do that while, I guess, trying to encourage people not to go back to drugs? What does this dynamic look like for people working on the ground with folks?
Yeah. I think that people will not seek care until they're ready to seek care. We have to constantly work to build the kind of conditions that can give a person a sign that this is my time to seek care. We have to be ready, on standby. Like, we can't just be like, oh, you want to seek care? Okay, well, call this number, and then there's a 3-month wait list, and, then you're going to have to sign up for me. Like, we can't do all those things. We have to be on standby for whenever that person is ready, and we have to consistently create conditions in a society to tell our residents that we care about them and we know that they are an important part of this community. And that's what we try to do across the board. When we talk about providing these services, we don't want to just provide them in a traditional sense. One of our biggest investments thus far through the settlement fund dollars has been actually inside the jail. We provide medication-assisted treatment to people who have entered the jail, who are current residents in the jail. And, this is the time when they're ready to start their road to recovery. And that's paired with all of these incredible programs that we have in partnership with our sheriff's office and the public health office when they get released to continue that road to recovery.
Yeah, but you're saying that people are opting into this. You can't force people to seek help. You can't force people to try to treat their addiction.
Yeah. I don't know. Have you ever had what do you call it? Not addiction, but sin. Have you?
Okay,
ever had,
or like a habit that I wanted to break.
Vice. Okay.
Oh, a vice. Yeah, so, sure. Yes.
Have you ever had a vice?
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes.
How many times did your mom or your caretaker or somebody tell you not to do it? And were you just like, okay, well, mom said I'm not to do it?
It's very hard to break. There feels like something that's like beyond my power that I can't just stop whenever I want to.
Yeah. And you can't do it based on shame or forcing someone or fear. Fear, in fact, sometimes drives people back further into a space because oftentimes the reason why somebody is doing it is not because, it's fun. Most people are doing it to alleviate pain for something else, and our job is to find out what that something else and address it. Homelessness, for example, is a big thing, right? We have so many people that don't have a place to sleep at night. We expect them to, without any help, find their path to recovery. We need to be able to provide them care on the ground.
And I think some people think, well, they're homeless because they're addicted to drugs. But what you're saying is, no, they have some deeper issue. They have some deeper source of pain that has not been addressed, that has not been resolved. And until we get there, until we try to seek and uproot that, maybe meet it where it's at, then we're never going to resolve the issue of addiction and maybe homelessness as well for a particular person.
Yeah. Like, think about how many of our unhoused folks in our region are veterans. They had a career and a life, and something happened along the way, and they ended up where they ended up. I can't share the details of what happens in the opiate fatality review because those are confidential. But our general theme is that a lot of the folks that ended up dying by overdose, their life didn't start out like that. I think it's really important to understand that. We've come across people that were like running their own business or, had a successful job, and either the economy failed them, or they had a big loss in their family, they're grieving. It could be so many factors. And we need to be able to provide support from them immediately. And that's why I'm so excited. Actually, we had a grand opening of our Oakland 360 Center. And the Oakland 360 Care Center is a 7 days a week walk-in basis place where people can come for mental health, physical health, and social care. So you could literally walk into a place like that with a cold and walk out with a support system that's linked you to therapy, to employment, to housing, to workforce, because we need to create more access points.
I think one of the things about addiction and that I wanted to ask you about as it pertains to Oakland County is, where does it cluster? Where in Oakland County are you seeing a lot of cases of addiction crop up? Or is it that it's very spread out and the numbers are pretty even across the board depending on the suburb that you're in?
So it's really interesting because we, obviously had to look at the cities and villages and townships that have the highest overdose when we were doing our listening sessions. And it's a mix. I mean, you have some rural areas. So we have like Pontiac, Waterford Township, Madison Heights, Southfield, Farmington Hills. I mean, these are cities that range in being urban and rural, range in, ethnic diversity, age diversity, presence of, economic investments. I mean, it's all over the map. And that's why I keep saying that the face of addiction that we all have in our mind is very different than what it actually is.
What should people do if they have a loved one in their life, a friend, a family member, relative, what have you, who is in the throes of addiction? What should be their emotional response? I think it's really hard for people to watch folks in their lives who they really love and care about suffer. How should people show up for folks who are struggling with managing addiction?
I think that oftentimes our response to somebody who's suffering is the compassion and the giving, but I think a response needs to be empathy. You understand their pain, but you know that maybe the response that you are capable of giving is not going to help them. So maybe shifting that mindset from compassion to empathy. And then the other piece is, I think what's been really successful for people is when their loved one who's struggling has connected with someone who's had lived experience. And that's why these kind of programs that we have that involve peers are so important. I actually sat through some of these visits where a person has gone in and he talked to somebody in the throes of addiction, said, you know what, I've been in your place. I was actually passed out under a bridge in a parking lot a few years ago, and I made it back. And it doesn't mean you're going to make it back today, but I'm just telling you to not let that glimmer of light shut off. So I think peers plays such a big role, and stigma-free, welcoming environments. So
it's understanding people's perspectives. It's trying to listen to people's stories and resist the urge to try to fix them or have some solution.
Yes, because again, this is my humble opinion, but the only person who can fix me is me, right? But if I know that I have a chorus of yes around me, even when I'm in the depths of darkness, that one glimmer of light never leaves.
Madiha Tariq is the Deputy County Executive for Oakland County, where she runs the Health and Human Services Department. She was speaking with the Metro's Sam Corey. Tomorrow on the Metro, we look at the intersection of privacy, equity, and safety in Ferndale. City Council there is expected to vote next week on whether to keep its contract with Flock Safety, which provides license plate readers. Some residents and advocates question how secure the data is and whether the technology is used equitably. Several Metro Detroit communities use this same company. Tomorrow, we'll hear from community members who oppose renewing the contract and why they want the city to walk away. Coming up, Tia takes us inside the handcrafted fashion world of Nabila Najjar. It's slow fashion stitched one seam at a time. That's next on the Metro after the news from NPR and WDET. This is WDET-FM, Detroit Public Radio, your connection to news, music, and conversation.